The phone is going to ring. And before it does, before the number appears on the screen, and the specific recognition of who it is lands in your body before your mind has processed it, I want to describe something about where you are right now. Because the call is coming into a specific version of your life, a specific version of you, and that context matters for how you receive what's said. You've been in a quiet period, not quiet in the empty sense, quiet in the specific way of someone whose interior life has been more active than their external circumstances would suggest, who has been processing things genuinely, substantively, at a depth that doesn't always show on the surface, while their external life maintained its ordinary shape. And in that quietness, something has been clarifying, not dramatically, in the slow, reliable way that things clarify when you stop forcing them and let them settle. Something in you knows what it wants more clearly than it did a few months ago. And the call that's coming is going to meet that clarity. Let me describe the person making this call, not their identity that's yours to know, but their quality, their interior state as they pick up the phone and dial. They've thought about this, not impulsively reached for their phone in a moment of feeling and acted on it, thought about it, sat with the decision, turned it over enough times that by the time they're actually dialing, the decision itself is solid. What's not solid, what still has some uncertainty in it, is the reception. They don't know how you'll respond. And that not knowing is present in them as a specific located anxiety, somewhere in the chest, the particular feeling of someone who is about to say something real and important and has no guarantee of how it lands, but they're calling anyway. That matters. The calling anyway in the presence of uncertainty. That's not a small thing. There's something about Aquarius in this, and I want to address this because the title names a sign, and I think it's relevant to who is calling or to the quality of the energy involved. Aquarius carries a specific quality in its communication, a way of approaching things that is simultaneously emotionally genuine and intellectually framed, that feels its way through things and also thinks its way through them simultaneously. That can struggle to lead with pure feeling because the mind is always present, always organizing, always trying to make sense of the emotional content while the emotional content is still arriving. So what this person says may not come out in a straight emotional line, may have a structure to it, a quality of someone who has prepared slightly, who has thought about how to say something real in a way that their own mind can hold while they're saying it. Don't mistake that structure for lack of feeling. The feeling is real. The structure is how they carry it well enough to get it to you. Hold on, because there's something about the future dimension of this, what they have to say about the future, that I want to try to describe carefully. It's not a prediction, it's a proposal. And the distinction matters because a prediction is something unobserved, something that's coming regardless of input. A proposal is something offered, something that requires a response, something that only becomes real if both people move toward it. What this person is calling to say is that they want a particular future, specifically with you in it. Not vaguely, not the generic wanting of someone who has assessed you and decided you're a good option. With the specific, this is what I'm picturing quality of someone who has imagined something concrete, who has let themselves go far enough into the imagining that it has detail now, texture. The kind of specificity that only develops when something has been genuinely considered rather than casually entertained. They've been imagining a future that includes you for longer than they're probably going to admit on the call. There's an image, two people in separate spaces, separate rooms, separate lives, separate sets of ordinary days, both oriented, without the other knowing, toward the same point. Like two rivers running parallel, not yet converged, moving in the same direction without touching, each carrying its own particular character, its own particular history, toward something neither has yet seen, but both have been moving toward. The call is the moment the rivers touch, not merge touch, the first contact, the specific, significant, everything changes moment of two things that have been running parallel, discovering each other's proximity. And what happens after the touching depends on what both people bring to the confluence. The more I sit with this, the more I keep finding something about what this call is actually for. It's a clearing, not just a communication, a clearing. This person wants to address something, to dissolve some ambiguity that has been sitting between you, to remove the uncertainty that has been making certain things feel unavailable, to say something specific enough that the space between you has different dimensions after the call than it did before. They're tired of the ambiguity. That's what I keep getting. The specific exhaustion of someone who knows what they feel, who has known for a while, who has been living alongside that, knowing without acting on it, and has reached the point where living alongside it without acting on it costs more than acting on it would. Even with the risk, even with the uncertainty of your response, the ambiguity has become more expensive than the vulnerability. So they're calling. I want to talk about what you're likely to feel when you see who's calling. Before you answer, in the specific few seconds between recognition and response, something is going to move in you. Not a single clean thing, several things simultaneously. The particular complexity of someone whose feelings about a person are real and layered and not entirely resolved. There might be some version of relief. The specific, slightly unwanted relief of something you've been carrying, finally finding a place to land, of an uncertainty that has been running quietly in the background of your interior life suddenly being addressed. There might be caution, the earned, intelligent, entirely reasonable caution of someone who knows that calls like this can go different ways, who has learned not to assume outcomes before they've arrived. And underneath both of those, something warmer, something that exists in you about this person that your caution doesn't fully cancel, that has been present regardless of the complexity. That this call is going to give you an opportunity to, if you choose, let be known. All of those things can be present simultaneously. None of them requires suppression. Wait, because I want to address something specific about the future conversation itself. What happens during the call? Not just what they say, how you navigate it. Virgo's instinct on calls like this is to listen more than speak, to gather information before offering any, to understand the full shape of what's being said before responding to any part of it, to hold the composure that has become so native it happens automatically, and that instinct is largely good. Listening fully before responding is real intelligence. But I want to add something to it. At some point during this call, at some specific moment where what they've said has given you enough to work with, there's going to be an opening, a pause, a moment where the call is waiting for you rather than the other way around. And in that moment, say the true thing. Not the entire interior landscape of everything you feel, not a declaration that matches theirs in size and scope necessarily, but something true, something from your actual center rather than from the composure. Because they're calling with vulnerability, and vulnerability, when it's genuine, is best met with something real. Not a performance of openness, not a managed response calibrated for optimal outcome. Something that is actually yours, however small, however qualified, however uncertain, real. There's something about timing in this call that I want to name. It's coming at the right moment. And I don't mean that in the generic sense of things happening when they're supposed to. I mean it in the specific sense of this particular call arriving when both of you are actually ready for it. When you've both done enough interior work separately without coordinating that the conversation has somewhere real to go. Earlier versions of this call would have been different. Would have happened between earlier versions of both of you, would have carried more of the unprocessed things, more of the unexamined assumptions, more of the patterns that create distance rather than closing it. This version is cleaner than that, not uncomplicated, but cleaner, clearer, more honest in its intention, and honest calls between people who are actually ready for them produce something different than calls between people who are still becoming ready. I want to say something about the future they want to discuss, because I think the word future can feel enormous, abstract, like something being asked about that requires certainty nobody has. But what I keep getting is something more manageable than that. They're not asking you to commit to decades. They're asking you to commit to a direction, a specific, clear, this is where I'm heading and I want to know if you're heading there too kind of direction. Not the entire journey mapped out, just the compass bearing, just the honest answer to whether you're oriented toward the same point or different ones. And that's a question you can actually answer. Not perfectly, not with complete certainty, but honestly from where you currently are, with what you currently know. There's something I want to say about what this call represents in the larger story of your life. Because sometimes things that seem like single events are actually thresholds, moments where the path forks in a way that's not always visible in real time but becomes clear in retrospect, where a choice made in an ordinary moment, in an ordinary conversation, through the specific way you receive something and respond to it, turns out to have set a direction that the subsequent months confirm. This call might be one of those moments, not because of anything dramatic in its content, because of what it represents, the specific, significant fact of someone choosing to be honest with you about something important, of the future being named rather than only implied, of the ambiguity that has been occupying background space being directly addressed rather than maintained through mutual avoidance, When moments like this arrive, they deserve your full presence, not the managed version, not the version that's already 3 steps ahead in the analysis, the actual version present to what's happening, open to where it goes. The last thing, pick up the phone. I say that specifically because I think there's a part of you, the part that has learned to be careful, that has learned to not move toward things too quickly, that has developed the specific self-protection of someone who has been disappointed by certainty before. That part might hesitate, might let it ring one extra time, might need a moment before answering. That's fine. That moment is yours. But then pick up, because what's on the other side of this call is not something to be protected from, is not another version of a thing that has disappointed before, is someone choosing in the specific, vulnerable, this requires courage way of someone who has thought carefully about what they're doing, to be honest with you about what they want. And you deserve to receive that fully, without the glass, without the composure that keeps things from landing too completely, with the actual you, complicated, uncertain, real, and entirely worth what this person is calling to say. Pick up. If something in this touched something true, if a moment arrived somewhere you needed it to, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me what resonated, even just a few words. It means more than you know.